Hello, Heather. How are you?
I'm good, Michelle. I'm excited for this episode today to continue our conversation from last week about your near deaths.
I am excited too. I'm really excited to share my third near-death experience and also to, move in and talk a little bit more about Gary's transition by suicide, because I think that too will help a lot of people. But yeah, let's jump in. So if anyone has missed my first and second near-death experiences, we recorded those last week, so you can jump on there to see those and hear them and see what they were about. But today we're going to talk about my third one. So for those people who like numbers, it happened on 11/1/11. So November 1st, 2011 was my third near-death experience. At this point in my life, I was married. I had 3 little kids. I had a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And we had 14-foot ceilings in the house that we lived in. So my younger 2 kids were at home. My oldest was at school in an after-school program. And I told the younger kids, I said, as soon as I get done going up this ladder to put this candle back up, we are going to go get your sister. So about 12 feet off the ground, I had these battery operated candles. I'd change the battery once a month. They turned on every night, just added some ambiance. But this is something I had done about 20 times. Just climb up the ladder, put the candles back. So as I start to climb up this ladder, I feel it start to shift. And in that moment, all I could think is, this is going to hurt. I was literally ripped out of my body, but not in a painful way, in a quick way. So I want you to think bungee cord. I want you to think fast. I was standing with these 3 people that I didn't know. They felt like family or lifelong friends. And I was turned around and I was facing my body in the ladder suspended in the air, like a freeze frame in a movie. As I was in this space, again, I start to notice the timelessness, the unconditional love, the feelings of bliss. And I'm looking at these 3 people. One is an Asian man, the other is an Egyptian woman, and the other one is a Hawaiian man. And as I'm standing here with them, they said to me, what would you like to do? Would you like to stay or would you like to go? And at that moment, I saw this beautiful angel come in, and this angel was dressed in a very deep red and gold. And when I saw this angel, I immediately knew it was going to either take me home to that heavenly realm or shift something so that I could stay. I remember also standing here with these 3 amazing beings that I was thinking, I don't understand this. Like, I have forever to decide if I want to stay or go. And my body's going to hit the floor in a second or less. So I was in my head a little bit about what was going on and how I had forever to decide when it didn't make sense with the rules that I knew existed here on planet Earth. As I was standing in this beautiful other dimension with them right there in my kitchen, my attention was drawn to my younger 2 kids. And as it was drawn into, I remember thinking, oh, I need to stay. I'm not done being their mom. I want this opportunity. I want to be here longer. As I made this decision, I was downloaded with a lot of information. And the information was this. It was like, okay, you can stay, but you need to go back and you need to do your mediumship and work with people and help them in the way that you can help them. They told me that my marriage would most likely end in divorce. They told me that I had more trauma ahead. And as I am here in this beautiful heavenly realm, I remember thinking, okay, send me in. Like, it felt like nothing, right? They weren't telling me I was going back to all rainbows and unicorns and butterflies. They were very, very clear. This is not going to be an easy road. And yet in that heavenly realm, I was clearly wanting the opportunity to come back in. This is really important because we do have people that remember their pre-life planning. I'm not one of those people, but I remember being in that heavenly realm, being told that life was going to be hard and challenging and still choosing it, right? I wasn't forced to come back. So I ended up coming back into my body as I've made this agreement to work and do my mediumship and understanding that there's a lot more trauma and hard days coming. I go back into my body. I fall off the ladder. The back of my head hit the corner of my granite island. So I had a 5.5 inch skull fracture. I had a brain bleed on this side. I lost my taste, my smell, and my equilibrium. But I literally survived the fall by 1/2 inch. That angel had moved my head 1/2 inch. The base of my skull, if anyone's familiar with this, your brain stem kind of comes up through the base of your skull like this. The base of my skull had fractured all the way through and missed the brain stem by 1/2 inch. So that was the difference of me staying or going back into that heavenly realm. And this became like a very, very challenging time for me. I want to go into a little bit more about that, right? Because my younger two kids were home at the time, Sophie and Josh, and they were the ones that ended up calling 911. Josh had tried to call, and his call didn't go through, and Sophie's call did. So I was taken to the hospital. They were doing CAT scans. Some of the miracles around this was that the brain bleed stopped on its own. So the skull did not indent when it fractured. So I didn't have to have brain surgery or any type of surgical intervention. But I literally couldn't even lift my head because my vestibular system had been shattered. So I couldn't sit up. I couldn't walk. There was a lot of stuff that was going on. I had memory loss. It was the complete traumatic brain injury on top of all of this. So I was in the hospital for about 10 days. They did vestibular therapy, which was literally the difference of me being able to sit up or not, because I had no balancing system. And then I end up coming home. And so I get back into life at home. Literally, I would stand up and fall down because my balance was off. I had, very wide, probably 10-foot wide hallways. I would ping pong off the walls trying to get down the hall. There was just so many physical challenges that were still in place, even though I had survived it. And again, I had known that I had this amazing experience, but I didn't know what to do with it, let alone the fact that I was just lucky to be able to get to the bathroom or the kitchen by myself. So later on, we're moving into January of 2012. So this is a couple months after that near-death experience. My son Josh, he started getting very depressed because he would say, I tried to call 911. My call didn't go through. I did nothing to help you. Sophie could have done this without me. And he would tell this to me, my mom, and my mother-in-law at the time. And we would all say, but Josh, you helped. You opened the door. You let the policeman in. It just was this huge weight and burden on him. So the end of January 2012, my grandfather, who passed away when I was 12 years old, came through to me in this manifestation visit. And as a medium, spirit does not usually manifest to me. I was standing in the kitchen in that house. My grandfather appeared, and I said to him, I have not seen you in so long. And he looked at me in the most loving way, and he said, I knew it would seem like that to you. He went on to talk about my accident, my head injury, my son Josh, who never walked this earth at the same time as him. And before he left, he said to me, you need to get the 911 recording. There's something on there you should know. I didn't even know I could get the 911 recording. So at that point in time, I went down to the police station. I ordered it. It took a couple weeks to come in, and I received it in the mail. As I put this CD in to play it, I heard them say, 911, what's your emergency? And in his little broken voice, I hear my son Josh say, Sophie, what do I say? And then he laid the phone down. So for the next minute and a half, you can hear the operator trying to get their attention. You can hear the kids in the background. And my son finally says he's going to go push the house alarm to get help. And my daughter says, hold on, let me call 911 first. She hangs up the phone, redials, and her call goes through to a different operator. They're asking her about what's happening, and they even connect her to the firemen who are en route to the house already because my son's call had gone through. So she's describing to them what she was seeing. because of this, Josh came home from kindergarten that day. And I looked at him and I said, Josh, I got the recording. Help was coming. Your call went through. And it was like lifting this 5,000-pound weight off this 5-year-old little boy. You could see his self-worth flood back into him. You could see that he felt like he had truly done something to help me. And it was this most beautiful and profound experience because so many things shifted in my life during that third near death experience. But the fact that my grandfather on the other side had this pivotal piece of information that I didn't know was available, and it shifted the course of my son's life, truly brought me into the gravity of how powerful and strong mediumship is.
That's an incredible story, Michelle. So if I understood correctly, you had that whole experience with the angels and the three people before your body hit the counter and hit the ground.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So and then when you came back into your body as you were falling, then did you feel the pain and the impact of when you hit the counter and hit the ground?
This is a great question, and it's really important to talk about. I did not feel the pain of my body hitting the counter and the ground. I did get back in my body and have to deal with the recovery of it, which was quite long and painful. But very often, and anyone who listens to multiple NDEs, what you're going to find is the soul does not need to feel that level of trauma that the body is going through to shut down. And so the soul, to some extent, is disengaged from the body. So when we see loved ones that have what appears to be a very traumatic passing, or we're worried about that because we've heard about it, the truth is their soul does not feel the pain.
Interesting. And so when you were on the ground, were you unconscious, or do you remember seeing your kids, hearing your kids talking to 911?
Yeah, I was in and out of consciousness. I would come in, but with the level of vestibular damage that I had, it was like being on every ride at Disneyland at the same time. So my eyes were just darting back and forth with nystagmus. I could not focus. I could not. It was. I had also had I lost part of my hearing during that. So I remember at one point the firemen standing over me, and it was almost like this scene in the movie where they were having to yell at me even though they were like 8 inches away from my face because I could not hear them.
And so how long after this near-death experience did you start to work on your mediumship skills? And what was that experience like?
Yeah, so it took me a while because like I said, I had so much physical trauma. I was just trying to walk down the hallway again and do basic daily tasks. But once my grandfather came in the end of January, I had this profound understanding of why I had agreed to it. And yet I still didn't know what that was going to look like or how I was going to make that happen. So as time went on, I had more connection with spirit. People's loved ones would come in and give me these messages, and I would start to share them. And then I started to think, this is awkward. I feel a little crazy. I'm going to go to a counselor. So spirit led me to the perfect counselor who, as I was sharing these stories with her, looked at me and said, what a gift. Let's get you a mentor. And because of that, I started mentoring with a couple different people. And that really led me into working with my mediumship full time and being able to connect with angels and loved ones and life guides. And again, with this third near death experience, I did not know it was an NDE. It was the same counselor who explained to me the 3 experiences I had had and what they were, because I still didn't have a box to put them in. I did not know during that experience that the 3 people I was with were my life guides, because that wasn't a term in my vocabulary, but now I know that. So it was just really amazing to be able to have someone who could help me connect all these dots and then step forward into what was part of my soul agreement to be able to stay here.
And I know you mentioned as part of those messages you received, they told you that your marriage would end in divorce. Did that weigh heavy on you, or did you kind of just like push it to the back of your mind? Because it wasn't for several years after that that you actually did get divorced.
Yeah, it was quite a few years after that. So I kind of pushed it to the back of my mind because they basically said most likely will end in divorce.
Mhm.
And so in my mind, that meant there was still that really good chance that at some point he would come into alignment. One of the things we know about people who have near death experiences is they have an 80% divorce rate because you literally cannot go to that heavenly realm and come back the same person. So, what would happen then is as I started to follow my soul agreement and my passion of being able to work as a medium, every step I took more toward what I had agreed to do to stay longer was almost a step away from him because he just could not get on board. He felt very uncomfortable with it. He didn't like this at all. Even to the point where when I filed for divorce, he said to me, in my defense, I didn't know I was marrying a medium. And I said to him, I didn't know you were either. So we had been married for 25 years when the marriage came to the point where the divorce was really the best option for us because of many things that had happened. And so, yes, looking back, my life guides were correct. My marriage ended in divorce. I am somebody who tends to be like hope dies last. So I would go through many options of showing him text and emails about people validating the readings and how life changing they were. But it was never something that he could even see. And so that was really, really a challenge. So during this time, and after the divorce process or after I filed for divorce, as you know, I fell in love again. And this is going to be kind of that part. So if somebody's having a hard time listening to stories or talks about suicide, this would be the time for them to go ahead and turn this off. But I'm going to talk about my personal experience with suicide and my life partner at this time. And so I fall in love again with Gary, and you got to meet him and know him personally. And that was just such a gift. And through my relationship with Gary, I knew he had depression. So he would do this thing where there would be 2 or 3 days where he would just go off the grid. He would turn off his phone, his email, and he would just sleep through it. And at that point in time, his brain would kind of reset and he could come back, reemerge into the world, and go on functioning again until he had another one of these situations or spells pop up. And so I understood that. He had tried many different types of medication. He literally owned every self-help book you can imagine. When he transitioned and we had to empty out his bookcase, there were hundreds of self-help books. So I want to say something about this because it's really important for people to know that depression is a disease, and he did everything that he could to try to fight it and win. I actually ended up putting him kind of in the same idea of my mom, where my mom fought cancer for 20 years, and yet she ended up transitioning from breast cancer. Like you could see where he had spent decades fighting this. And so Gary and I, we fall in love. We're planning on our life together. He's absolutely my life partner. The kids are, enjoying him. He becomes very close with my daughters. It's just this beautiful relationship. And then it was actually your house. So what happened is I go to Las Vegas to see my sister, and my niece had just had a baby. So meet my great nephew, and I had taken my daughter Ashley with me. We were in Vegas for a couple of days. And then the morning of August 10th, I was texting him, and, I said, I've had a good time with my family and I'm ready to come home and see you tonight. And he responded. He sounded good over text. He said he had just done a meeting. He was starting a new job. Like it was a group meeting online, and it was very motivational. And so I just felt like things were good. That day, we get to the airport and I text him and he didn't respond. And I figured it was because he was with a client because it was the time that he was at work. So I didn't think much about it. I get home. I still haven't heard from him. I have no call or text or anything like that. So again, I'm texting, I'm leaving him messages and not hearing anything. And I kind of just decide that he must be having one of these, spells where he just needs a few days to himself. the next morning I get up. Again, nothing from him. So I call his work and they tell me that he had called in sick. So at that point in time, I'm kind of finding some I don't know, maybe peace, because I'm like, okay, if he called in sick, he's at home. What happened was his younger daughter, who lived with him at the time, did not want to meet me in person yet. So I drove by his place that day and I saw both of their cars outside. And because of that, I didn't knock on the door, and I assumed that he was inside, in bed, going, sleeping, doing whatever he needed to do for himself. So he and I had this party that we were going to, which was actually at your house that night. And I remember showing up that night and multiple people asking where he was, and just saying, I think he's having a hard time right now. He's not here. So that night I went home, and I think I got home around midnight. And as I'm in my bathroom getting ready to brush my teeth and go to bed, I literally feel Gary come in. I can see exactly what he is wearing. And he looks at me and he says to me, what did he say? He said, you're so beautiful. And the next thing I know, my body starts to shake because I'm aware that this is mediumship. And I start crying because I just have this understanding that he is no longer in his human form. I'm able to make it to my bed, where I just like laid down and sobbed. And as I lay down on my bed, I could feel him lay behind me, put his arm over me, and say, I wanted to be the one to tell you. And this was how I found out that he had transitioned by suicide.
Yeah, I remember that night when you came to the house and we were just like, "Where's Gary? Where's Gary?" And Gary was like so full of life and so full of love and always had the biggest smile on his face, and kind of we didn't realize what he was dealing with behind closed doors. But I do remember that, and I do remember feeling like something wasn't right. But at the time, I remember you were more angry and frustrated, like, I don't know why he's not responding. So I was just like, okay, like it's okay. He's just kind of doing one of his things, but just kind of feeling like this doesn't feel right. And also being like, well, Michelle's a medium. So if something were to happen, she would know. And I remember we talked about that later of like you weren't ready to hear it yet. You weren't open to receiving that idea that something like that could happen to Gary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important that we talk about that, because so often in my world, when I'm doing podcasts and things like that, people will say to me, well, you're a medium. How did you not know? How did you not see this coming? And I'm going to say there are a couple of reasons for that. One, we're not supposed to know everything that is going to happen in our lives. But the other thing was that this was most likely how Gary was going to exit the world. So since he transitioned, I started diving into soul plans and understanding like that higher picture and that connection to source. It wasn't 100% guaranteed, but he was more likely to leave this way than most. And being able to understand that and know that I wasn't supposed to know, and that Gary was still met with love and compassion and welcomed home with open arms, was really where I needed to start focusing my energy to be able to heal on that long road.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It was just such a hard experience for everyone. And I remember everyone just being in shock and not quite understanding. And, you went through all the emotions of anger and frustration and how could you do this to me? And then coming back and really realizing that like he was sick and he didn't have that choice so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that's really important. For me to say that, even as someone who worked as a medium, working with suicide for years before this, talking to spirit on the other side and the survivors of it, and knowing what I know from spirit world, I still had no way to bypass this grief. I still had to go through it like every other human. I might have had a greater understanding. Like, I wasn't afraid that he wasn't met with light and love and compassion. I knew that he had been. But the grief process and the trauma process of moving through something like that There is no way to bypass.
Yeah, and I remember sitting with you during those times, and like you said, it's like I respect you. I love your mediumship and all the things that you do, and knowing that even though you have had those near-death experiences and experienced that on the other side, that grief was so real, and you had to go through all of those stages of mourning and loss of losing Gary.
Yeah, it was, there were days where it was literally just take the next breath, take the next breath, and I was so blessed to have you and so many amazing people in my life to help me, to literally at times carry me through those days. So like forever and ever am I grateful to you and your friendship. And Heather was one of the first people at my house. She was like the first one to show up the next morning, when I called. So it's really, I'm just so grateful for you and your friendship. And I'm so grateful for the space that you hold, not just for myself, but for everyone who watches these Mondays with Michelle, because you hold such a beautiful space of love and compassion, and bringing in your real life experiences helps us all find more that we can relate to in these.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. It was to be able to sit with someone in their like deepest pain and grief is an honor to like be like trusted with that. And also it's so hard to watch people you care about go through that, and you want to fix it and you want to change it and you want to make it all better. And knowing that the best thing I could do for you was just to be with you. And I remember just sitting there and we just cried and cried and cried. And that's all I could do at that time, was just sit in that pain with you and mourn that loss of Gary. And I remember also there were so many amazing, amazing experiences that took place after Gary's death. He continued to reach out to you through so many avenues and wanted you to know how much he loved you and how much he missed you and how much he was there with you. And there were so many amazing miracles that took place.
There were, and I love that you were able to have a front row seat to all of those. And I think for everyone who is missing a loved one in spirit, no matter how they got to the other side, it's important for them to know that your loved one is still reaching out to you, that your love, your communication, your connection, it has not ceased to exist, because they're no longer in their physical realm. They're still wanting that relationship and that connection, and to cheer you on and carry you. And I will say that I felt like there were many days that Gary's love and energy is what carried me through the day, as well as the amazing people that were in my life.
Thanks so much for sharing, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you for always being here, not just on Mondays with Michelle, but is one of the most amazing beings of light in my life. And I'm very honored to call you one of my best friends.
I love you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, Heather and I are done with our love fest. Thank you so much for hanging in here. And just please know that the reason that I'm sharing these parts of my life that are so challenging is because I know each of you have your own part of life that is really challenging that you're going through. And I want you to see from these near-death experiences and from the loss of Gary that there is always hope, there is always love, there is always connection, and no one is living this life alone. So I wish you a beautiful week ahead. Thank you so much, Heather.
You're welcome. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.